I found Emma's rental ad on a Tuesday night while eating grocery store pasta over my laptop. The ad was almost suspiciously simple. Private furnished room. Quiet house. No parties. No overnight guests. Reasonable monthly rent. Close to public transportation. There were only 2 photos. One showed a clean bedroom with a narrow desk under the window. The other showed the front of a 2-story house with a small porch and trimmed hedges. No wide-angle tricks. No decorative pillows arranged like a hotel. No smiling roommates holding wine glasses. That alone made it better than most listings I had seen. I had just finished graduate school and started working at a small urban planning consultancy downtown. My title sounded more important than the work. Research assistant and junior analyst. Mostly, I reviewed neighborhood proposals, organized survey results, corrected reports, and built presentation slides for senior employees who had more meetings than time. The job was stable. The salary was not impressive. Between student debt and city rent, a full apartment was out of reach unless I wanted to live beside a highway with 3 strangers and a refrigerator that belonged in a science experiment. So I called the number. A woman answered after 2 rings. Hello? Her voice was calm and direct. I'm calling about the furnished room. Are you employed? That was her first question. No greeting. No sales pitch. Yes. What do you do? I explained the job. She paused for a second. Do you work from home? Sometimes, but usually I'm at the office. Do you play music loudly? No. Do you own a drum set? No. Do you intend to buy one? I laughed, but she didn't. At least not right away. No. Good. You can see the room this afternoon. She gave me the address and ended the call before I could ask many questions. The house was on a quiet street about 10 minutes from a bus line. The afternoon was bright and clear. Children were riding bicycles near the corner, and somebody across the street was washing a car. I climbed the porch steps and knocked once. The door opened before I could knock again. You're Oliver. The woman standing there had shoulder-length light brown hair, gray-blue eyes, and the kind of posture that made me straighten mine without thinking. She wore a fitted dark knit top, tailored pants, and clean house slippers. Everything about her looked organized, including the way she studied me. That's me. Come in. Let's see if you're who I think you are. I stepped inside. The house smelled faintly like coffee and clean wood. It wasn't large or luxurious, but it was warm and carefully maintained. Nothing was out of place. Even the mail on the hallway table looked arranged on purpose. I'm Emma, she said. Shoes off before the main rug. I removed them immediately. She noticed. The room was upstairs at the back of the house. It had a bed, a dresser, a desk, 2 shelves, and a window facing a small garden. The furniture was simple but solid. The closet was empty, which was more than I could say for several other furnished rooms I had viewed. The bathroom is shared, Emma said. I use it early. You can use it whenever you like as long as you don't leave water on the floor. Reasonable. The kitchen is shared. You get 2 shelves in the refrigerator and 1 cabinet. Label anything important. Do people steal food here? No. There are no people here. There's me. I looked at her. She looked back. Then I realized that was probably a joke. The laundry room was near the kitchen. Storage was limited. The porch was available as long as I didn't leave things outside. Her office was at the front of the house, and she made it clear that I was not to enter unless invited. She worked as an independent corporate editor and communications consultant. She edited reports, executive presentations, training material, and business documents from home. So you correct people professionally, I said. I improve their chances of being understood. That sounds like correcting people with better branding. That got the smallest reaction at the corner of her mouth. We returned to the kitchen, where she explained the rest. Rent is due on the 1st. No parties. No loud music. Clean shared spaces after you use them. No overnight guests. No unnecessary personal drama. No guests. No drama, I said. Correct. What counts as drama? Emma folded her arms. Anything that makes me regret opening my door. I nodded slowly. That covers a lot. It's supposed to. She asked about my schedule, my income, my previous living arrangements, and whether I cooked. The conversation felt less like a rental viewing and more like a quiet interview for a position she had not fully defined. Finally, she leaned against the counter and studied me again. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone needier. I can act needy if it improves my application. That was when she smiled for real. It changed her face more than I expected. She looked warmer, younger, and briefly less guarded. Don't, she said. You can move in Saturday. I signed the agreement 2 days later. On Saturday, I arrived with my clothes, laptop, books, kitchen basics, work folders, and a few boxes that looked like more belongings than they actually were. Emma opened the side entrance and showed me where to put the extra key. This key opens the tenant entrance, she said. Not the front door. Understood. It's not personal. I didn't think it was. She gave me a look that suggested she wasn't sure whether I was being honest. I treated the room like a temporary stop. I kept most of my books in boxes. I left the walls empty. My plan was simple. Work, save money, find a small apartment, and move within a few months. During the first week, Emma mostly gave me space. We passed each other in the hallway. We exchanged brief comments in the kitchen. I heard her on client calls in her office, calmly explaining why a 12-word sentence did not need to become a 40-word sentence. Every morning, she made coffee at exactly 7. I usually came down at 7:15. On my third morning, I found my jar of instant coffee pushed to the back of the cabinet. A fresh bag of coffee beans sat in front of it. I held it up when Emma entered the kitchen. Was there an intervention? You looked exhausted yesterday. So you replaced my coffee? I improved it. That sounds familiar. She ignored that and reached for a mug. A few evenings later, I came home late after correcting a presentation that had already been corrected by 3 other people. A covered plate sat in the refrigerator with a note. Heat for 2 minutes. Not 3. I followed the instruction. The next morning, I left the newspaper she liked beside her coffee cup. I had marked an article about a redevelopment project near the river. She found me tightening a loose handle on one of the kitchen cabinets. You don't have to repair things, she said. It was bothering me. It has been loose for 6 months. That information makes it worse. She looked at the newspaper, then at the cabinet. Thank you. After that, our routines began overlapping without either of us admitting it. Sometimes we drank coffee at the same table. Sometimes she made tea while I read reports at the counter. We collected each other's mail. She started leaving books outside my room. I brought home pastries from a bakery near my office. I learned how she took her coffee. She learned that I skipped dinner when work became difficult. One evening, I was sitting on the porch with a stack of survey summaries when Emma came outside wearing dark jeans, a fitted cardigan, and ankle boots. She looked at the papers spread around me. You know, most people come outside to stop working. Most people don't have 73 handwritten complaints about parking. She sat in the chair beside mine. Any good ones? One person says bike lanes are a personal insult. Maybe they are. You're supposed to support urban planning. I support clear writing. The city can defend itself. I laughed. She watched me for a second longer than necessary. That was the first time I noticed it clearly. Not just that Emma was attractive. I had noticed that immediately. It was the way her attention stayed on me after the conversation should have moved on. Then she looked toward the street and crossed one leg over the other, calm as ever. I returned to the reports, but I read the same sentence 3 times. By then, I had lived in the house for less than 2 weeks. I still thought I was only renting a room. I had not yet understood that Emma noticed everything I did, or that I had already started listening for her footsteps before I came downstairs. By the 3rd week, Emma and I had stopped pretending our timing was accidental. She still never asked me to have coffee with her. I never asked her to sit on the porch. We just kept ending up in the same rooms at the same time. One Saturday morning, I came downstairs and found her standing beside a dining chair with one hand on its back. Feel like being useful? She asked. That depends. On what? Does useful come with better coffee? She glanced toward the coffee maker. You're already drinking my coffee. Then I'm available. She had made a list. Of course she had. The coat rack near the front door was loose. One cabinet door dragged against the frame. The dining chair shifted slightly whenever someone leaned back in it. None of the problems were serious, but Emma had written them on a small notepad in neat handwriting. You could hire someone, I said. I could also hand you a screwdriver. She handed me one. We started with the coat rack. Emma stood close enough to hold it steady while I tightened the screws. She smelled faintly like coffee and something clean I couldn't identify. I tried to focus on the wall. You missed one, she said. I was getting to it. You were staring at the wrong screw. I appreciate the supervision. I appreciate accuracy. The cabinet door took longer. Emma crouched beside me in dark jeans and a fitted green knit top, watching as I adjusted the hinge. You're surprisingly patient, she said. With cabinets? With being corrected. I work for senior planners. I'm corrected by people who haven't opened the document. That sounds difficult. It builds character. It builds resentment. That too. When I moved to the chair, she leaned against the table and watched me test each leg. Are you always this handy? She asked. Only when beautiful women are watching. The words came out before I had time to improve them. Emma raised one eyebrow. Is that supposed to work on me? I haven't figured that out yet. She held my eyes for a moment, then looked down at the chair. Well, keep working. Her voice stayed calm, but I saw the small smile she tried to hide. That changed something. Not dramatically. The house did not suddenly become a different place. She did not move closer or give me an obvious invitation. But after that, every quiet moment felt less neutral. Later that afternoon, I walked into the kitchen and found Emma slicing apples. She slid a few pieces onto a plate. Payment, she said. For 3 repairs? The chair no longer moves. That should be worth at least a sandwich. She pushed the plate toward me. I took one piece and leaned against the counter. Emma kept cutting, but I could tell she was thinking. You didn't answer honestly earlier, she said. About what? Why you know how to fix things. My father believed calling a repair company was a personal failure. That isn't what I meant. She set the knife down. I knew exactly what she meant. I also knew I could still pretend I didn't. That was one of my habits. I waited for other people to make difficult conversations unavoidable, then told myself I was being respectful. Emma looked at me directly. I gave up. I can't help staring sometimes. She didn't look surprised. I know. I let out a breath. That's slightly embarrassing. Only slightly. You could pretend you hadn't noticed. I don't pretend not to notice things. No, you definitely don't. She picked up the knife again and finished slicing the apple. Neither of us said that she had not told me to stop. For the next several days, our routines continued, but every small contact felt louder than it should have. We reached for the same light switch in the hallway. Her fingers touched mine, and both of us paused before moving away. She passed me a kitchen towel, and I became aware of how close she was standing. At dinner, I looked up from my plate and found her already watching me. Once, late at night, I heard her stop outside my bedroom door. She stayed there for several seconds, then continued upstairs. I lay awake longer than I should have, listening to the quiet movement above me. On Thursday, work was especially bad. A client rejected a report because the conclusion did not support the decision he had already made. My supervisor asked me to rewrite it without technically changing the findings. I spent most of the day trying to make honest data sound more convenient. When I got home, I went straight to the porch. The evening was clear and cool. I sat with my jacket open and stared at the street until Emma came outside carrying 2 mugs. Tea, she said. You look like coffee would make things worse. She handed me one and sat beside me. I told her about the report. So they want clarity, she said. As long as clarity agrees with them. Exactly. That's common. You say that like it doesn't bother you. It bothers me professionally. I've learned not to take it personally. I take too many things personally. I've noticed. I looked at her. She smiled into her mug. We sat quietly for a while. Then she said, living alone felt like freedom at first. The shift in conversation surprised me. At first, she watched a car turn at the end of the street. After my last serious relationship ended, I liked knowing where everything was. I liked not waiting for anyone. I liked not asking questions that wouldn't be answered. And then? Eventually, freedom started feeling a little like waiting. What are you waiting for? She turned toward me. Someone I don't have to explain every silence to. I tried to make a joke, but nothing useful came. Instead, I said, you scare me a little. Her expression sharpened. Why? Because I came here planning to leave, and now I keep looking for reasons to stay. Emma lowered her mug. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Then I reached for her hand. I did it slowly enough that she could pull away. She didn't. Her fingers closed around mine. When I leaned closer, she met me halfway. The kiss was quiet and careful. Nothing rushed. Nothing uncertain except what would happen after it. Her free hand rested against my shoulder, and mine settled at her waist. When we pulled apart, she looked at me as though she was checking whether I was still the same person. You should come inside, she said. We carried the mugs into the kitchen. She turned off the lights, then led me upstairs. Outside her bedroom, she stopped. This cannot become chaos. I don't want chaos. Her hand stayed on the door handle. Don't make this complicated. I'm not going anywhere. The moment I said it, something changed in her face. Not enough for me to understand. Just a brief hesitation before she opened the door. The rest of the night stayed private, quiet, and close. The next morning, I woke alone. Emma was already downstairs. She stood at the kitchen counter in tailored pants and a pale blouse, pouring coffee as if it were an ordinary workday. "Morning," I said. "Morning." She handed me a mug without meeting my eyes. "The bathroom shelf is loose," she said. "I'll take care of it later." I waited for her to say something else. She opened her laptop. "Also, the recycling goes out tonight." That was all. She was polite, calm, completely controlled. It felt as though the porch, the kiss, and the closed bedroom door had happened in a different house. I sat across from her with the coffee she had made exactly the way I liked it, trying to understand how someone could remember the amount of milk I used and still act as though the night before had changed nothing. For the next few days, Emma behaved like the night upstairs had been a scheduling error. She was never rude. That almost made it worse. She still made coffee. She still reminded me when the mail came. On Monday, I found a muffin beside my laptop with a note that said, "Eat before noon." On Tuesday, she left a book outside my room because she thought I would like the chapter on public spaces. But whenever I tried to move the conversation anywhere near us, she stepped around it. On Wednesday evening, I found her in the kitchen checking a client presentation on her tablet. "Emma." "Yes." "Can we talk about Saturday?" She kept reading. "The chair is still stable, if that's what you mean." "You know that's not what I mean." She set the tablet down carefully. "I have a deadline tonight." "Okay. After?" "I may be working late." Her tone was controlled, but not uncertain. She had already decided the conversation would not happen. I stood there for another second, then nodded. "Right." That night, I wrote a note. It was only 4 words. I wasn't pretending. I slid it under her bedroom door before leaving for work the next morning. When I came home, the note was gone. She never mentioned it. For a while, I told myself she needed time. That sounded mature, patient, respectful. It was also easier than asking what I was afraid to ask. What did I mean to her? Did she regret it? Was I still only the tenant with good manners and basic repair skills? Emma continued giving me answers in every form except words. She bought the coffee I liked. She saved dinner when I worked late. She lowered her voice during one of my online meetings. Once, when I came downstairs after sleeping badly, she looked at me and said, "You're not driving today. I take the bus." Good. Then she handed me a travel mug. The care was there. So was the distance. On Friday, I returned from work and noticed her small suitcase near the front door. "Going somewhere?" I asked. She was standing in the hallway wearing a simple dark dress and a cardigan. Her hair was pulled back, and she looked prepared in the way she always looked prepared. "I have a few things to handle." "Where?" "Chicago." I waited. She picked up the suitcase. "For work?" "Partly." "How long will you be gone?" "I'm not sure." That answer didn't sound like Emma. Emma knew how long milk had been open. She knew which day the porch plants needed water. She knew the exact minute a client had missed a deadline. "You're not sure?" "I need some time." There it was. Not an explanation. Just a phrase broad enough to end the conversation. Before I could decide what to say, she opened the front door. "I'll message you." Then she left. Her message came 20 minutes later. "Don't worry. I just need some time." I stared at it on the bus stop screen outside the grocery store. I typed 3 different replies and deleted all of them. Finally, I sent, "Okay." That was my mistake. Not because it was dishonest. I did understand that people needed space. But I had accepted a sentence with no return date, no real explanation, and no idea what I was supposed to do with the silence. The first 2 days, I assumed she would be back soon. I went to work. I paid rent on schedule. I brought in the mail and placed hers in a clean stack on the hallway table. At 7 each morning, the kitchen stayed silent. I made coffee, but the pot felt wrong with only enough for 1 mug. Her office door remained closed. No music. No phone calls. No calm voice explaining to a client why 8 slides should not contain 6 different fonts. On the porch, her chair stayed empty. By the 5th day, I stopped checking every sound near the front door. By the 7th, I started getting angry. The house still looked exactly the same. That was the problem. Her mug sat in the cabinet. The book she had been reading remained on the living room table. A grocery list in her handwriting was attached to the refrigerator. Coffee, apples, dish soap. The ordinary details made her absence feel deliberate. She had demanded no drama. She had built the house around rules, schedules, and clear expectations. Then she had left me inside it with none. A few short messages came during the first week. Hope work is going well. Remember recycling on Thursday. The plants only need water once. Nothing about us. Nothing about when she would return. Nothing that answered the question behind my note. I replied politely at first. Work is fine. Recycling is out. Plants are alive. By the second week, I stopped trying to sound normal. When she wrote, everything okay at the house? I answered, the house is fine. She did not ask whether I was. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with one of the books she had given me open in front of me. I wasn't reading. I realized I did not only miss the kiss or the private night upstairs. I missed the way she corrected my wording when I complained about work. I missed her dry comments from across the kitchen. I missed seeing a newspaper folded beside her coffee. I missed being noticed. And I was angry that she had made me feel foolish for noticing her back. Nearly 2 weeks after she left, Emma returned on an ordinary bright morning. I heard the front door open while I was rinsing my mug. She stepped into the kitchen carrying a grocery bag and a fresh package of coffee beans. Her hair was loose. She wore tailored trousers, a pale-fitted blouse, and ankle boots. She looked tired, but otherwise exactly like herself. She placed the bag on the counter. We're out of coffee, she said. I stared at her. She began taking groceries from the bag as though she had been gone for an hour. Apples, bread, coffee, dish soap, the same items from the list on the refrigerator. You disappeared, I said. Her hand stopped. I told you I needed time. You sent one message after you left. I didn't want you to worry. You left without telling me where I stood. Emma placed the bread on the counter. I needed space. Space is telling me you need a few days. Silence is leaving me to guess what I meant to you. Her expression tightened, but she didn't walk away. I didn't intend to hurt you. But you knew it would. She looked toward the window. For once, she had no quick answer. I kept my voice level. You made rules about everything. Rent, shoes, guests, noise. You even told me how long to heat dinner. But when something actually mattered, you left me here with no idea whether you regretted me. I didn't regret you. Then why did you act like I wasn't allowed to ask? Emma folded her arms, then unfolded them. I've lived alone for years, she said. I know how to manage my life alone. That isn't an answer. It's part of one. She took a slow breath. My last relationship taught me that asking for clarity doesn't always produce clarity. Sometimes it only gives another person a chance to lie more carefully. I stayed quiet. She looked at me then. He would disappear. He would come back and behave as though nothing had happened. If I asked questions, he said I was creating problems. The irony sat between us. Emma saw that I understood it. I know, she said quietly. I know what I did. Then explain it. You began to matter too quickly. I had expected many answers. That was not one of them. She continued before I could speak. You live here. You're younger. You're starting your career. You came into this house planning to save money and leave. Then you told me you weren't going anywhere. You asked me upstairs. I know. You kissed me back. I know. Then the next morning you discussed recycling. That was easier. For you. Yes. The honesty of that single word stopped me. Emma rested both hands on the counter. I wanted to believe you when you said you would stay. That frightened me more than if I thought you were lying. You want more than I know how to give, she said. Then learn. Or at least tell me when you're afraid. She looked down at the grocery bag. I stepped closer, but not close enough to touch her. You can ask for time alone. You can travel. You don't need permission from me. But you cannot vanish and leave me guessing when you plan to return. Her eyes lifted to mine. I'm not threatening to leave, I said. I'm telling you what I need if I stay. The kitchen went completely still. Then Emma said, I want you to stay. Not forever. Not as a promise she could control. Just the truth she was finally willing to say. I want you to stay. Emma said it quietly, but there was no hesitation in it. I looked at her across the kitchen counter, between the grocery bag and the coffee beans she had brought home like a peace offering. Stay as what? I asked. Her mouth tightened. It was the question I had avoided for weeks. I could see that it was also the question she had hoped I would continue avoiding. As someone important to me, she said. That's careful wording. I choose words carefully. I know. You do it for a living. She almost smiled, but the moment was too serious for either of us to escape that easily. Emma stepped around the counter. I'm afraid of depending on you, she said. I'm afraid this house will stop feeling like mine. I'm afraid I'll trust you, and one day you'll decide the age difference is too much, or the situation is too strange, or you simply want a different life? I might want a different apartment someday. Her face changed. I held up a hand. That's exactly why we need to separate the house from the relationship. Moving out wouldn't automatically mean leaving you. You say that now. Yes, I'm saying what I know now. I'm not promising something impossible just to make you feel better. She studied me. What are you promising? Honesty. Emma looked down for a second. That sounds less comforting than forever. It's more useful. This time, she did smile. Small. Tired. Real. Then she reached for me. The embrace felt different from the first kiss on the porch. There was still attraction, but there was also relief and something steadier underneath it. I held her without trying to turn the moment into another promise. Later that evening, we went upstairs together. Nothing felt rushed. There was no warning about chaos, no demand that we pretend it meant less than it did. When Emma closed her bedroom door, she looked at me directly instead of looking for an exit. The next morning, I woke to the sound of the coffee grinder. For one bad second, I expected the same cold kitchen and the same careful distance. Instead, Emma looked up when I entered. "Good morning," she said. "Morning." She poured coffee into 2 mugs. "I'm glad you stayed." I accepted mine. "I technically live here. You know what I mean." "I do." She kept looking at me while I took the first drink. That alone felt like a correction. Over the next few weeks, we built a rhythm that was less elegant than Emma's old system, but much more honest. She still withdrew sometimes. The difference was that she started naming it. "I need an hour. I'm overwhelmed. This conversation is making me nervous. I need tonight alone." The first few times, I had to stop myself from following her or trying to fix the problem. Then I realized she was doing exactly what I had asked. She was not disappearing. She was telling me where she was emotionally and when she expected to return. So I gave her the space. And when I felt shut out, I stopped pretending patience was enough. One evening, I told her, "When you close your office door after we disagree, I start wondering whether we're still having the same relationship." She nodded. "That's fair." It was not a perfect system. It was a real one. A month after Emma returned from Chicago, one of her old colleagues came for dinner. His name was Dan. He was polished, successful, and close to her age. He knew stories about her clients, old projects, and a conference in Boston where they had apparently survived 3 days of terrible presentations and worse hotel coffee. I disliked him almost immediately, not because he did anything wrong. That made it inconvenient. He was friendly to me. He asked about my work and listened to the answer. He complimented the cabinet repair without sounding sarcastic. He even brought dessert. Still, every time he and Emma laughed over some shared memory, I felt younger and less established. After he left, I started clearing the table too aggressively. Emma watched me stack the plates. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." She waited. I looked at her. "You're doing the thing," she said. "What thing?" "The thing where you claim to be calm because you don't want to ask the question." I set the plates down. "Were you ever involved with him?" "No." "Did he want to be?" "Possibly years ago." That did not help. Emma moved closer. "He's a friend. That's all." "He fits your life better." "According to whom?" I gestured vaguely toward the front door. "He has his own consulting firm. He knows your history. He probably owns a front door key to his own house." Emma folded her arms. "Oliver, are you jealous?" "Yes." The word was uncomfortable, but once it was out, I felt better. She reached for my hand. "Thank you for saying it." "You're not annoyed?" "I'm a little surprised." "That is not the same thing." "No, it isn't." She squeezed my fingers. "I chose you. Dan ate dinner here. You live here and argue with my coffee measurements." That sounds less romantic when you say it like that. I'm trying to make it clear. It worked. A few days later, we finally discussed the practical problem we had been stepping around. Emma was still my landlord. I was still paying rent. We sat at the kitchen table with the original rental agreement between us. "The rent stays the same," I said. I was going to suggest lowering it. "No, that would make every disagreement feel connected to money." She considered that. "All right. My room stays private." "Of course. You don't enter without permission." "I haven't." "I know. We're making the rule clear." Emma nodded and wrote it down. We agreed that personal arguments would not affect the rental agreement. I could move out without ending the relationship. Either of us could request a separate evening. My room would remain mine, not become storage or a symbolic extension of hers. Emma looked at the notes. "This is not very romantic." "It's extremely romantic if you enjoy clear expectations." She gave me a dry look. I created a problem. You created several. And now you're making rules. I learned from the best. That evening, we stood in the hallway near my door. Emma looked at the small sign she had once placed beside the tenant entrance. No guests. No drama. I still don't want guests or drama, she said. You knocked on my door and brought both. I suppose one exception survived. Several weeks later, Emma handed me a key while we were having coffee on the porch. It was not the side entrance key I already carried. It was the front door key. I turned it over in my hand. What's this? You know what it is. I know what it opens. Emma rested both hands around her mug. It's not about control. It's about trust. Are you certain? Yes. By then, we had agreed that we were exclusive. I still rented the room. We kept our finances separate. I kept my boxes, my books, and my desk exactly where they were. We did not pretend the age difference had vanished or that our situation was simple. We just stopped allowing silence to make decisions for us. Late one evening, I was reading in my room when someone knocked. I opened the door. Emma stood there holding 2 mugs of coffee and the first book she had ever left outside my room. Her smile was small and slightly uncertain. Do you mind if I come in? You own the house. That wasn't my question. I stepped aside. She entered and sat beside me on the bed, placing 1 mug on my desk. The new front door key was lying beside my laptop. I looked at it while Emma opened the book between us. The key did not mean the house belonged to me. It meant Emma had stopped deciding alone which doors could remain open.